what used to be a music podcast
Sorry.
was the Joe Budden podcast. I say used to because once Rory and Maul left, I stopped watching it.
You're not going to ever watch this again?
No, because it's not the same.
But you know what? I will say, this is like, I don't think, well, yeah. Okay, anyway, I will say, when, we're talking about the Rory and Maul and Joe Budden podcast, but when Rory and Maul left that first time, and then they replaced them with the new host now, I thought it was entertaining.
Yeah, it was great, but then...
And actually, the messed up part is when they came back, since I'm not like an OG like that, when Rory and Maul came back, I was like, dang, like, I'm kind of bored now, because they were so funny. The other two, like, they were like a good dynamic.
And then it fell off. That's why nobody watches it anymore.
But you know what? I will say, when Rory and Maul came back, the energy still wasn't there. So that's, of course, I felt like it was boring.
Let me not say that. People don't not watch the podcast anymore.
It's just not it's
just not the same.
It's not what it was.
The whole point of me watching it was because of those four, I would say, if you throw Parks in there. But everybody, like, it was the whole energy of everybody put together. Because
that's what all their stuff is memes and gifs. Like, you don't see no memes from any of the new stuff.
Yeah, the old stuff was some of the greatest entertainment I've ever watched. Like, you've seen, I will watch all of the podcast episodes, watch them multiple times. I watched the comps together.
I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch.
A funny moments, literally the funniest entertainment thing I've ever watched. Honestly, if it was on TV, it would be crazy.
Yeah, and I feel like, for me, from my perspective, I felt like it was something you actually genuinely enjoyed. Like, I never actually seen you watch something consistently like that. Like, you know, I don't watch anything. You say you're not a show person. You don't really watch stuff on YouTube unless it's like sports related or stuff. So I was like it sucks. Cause, I mean, at least you still have Rory and Maul, but it's like I know that for you it hurt because I was like you actually really genuinely enjoyed it.
I would never use the word hurt in this situation.
Not hurt, but it's like, dang, like that. Why they gotta ruin a good thing? Well, not them, but him, Joe.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. But yeah, the podcast was amazing.
Yeah.
But basically, I brought it up because Rory and Maul recently secured a new podcasting deal with Sirius.
Yeah, it's the Sirius XM, whatever their podcast thing is.
And it's estimated that the deal is over 10 mil or somewhere around 10 million.
What was their Spotify deal?
They never said.
What was the other deal that Joe shut down?
He never said. Allegedly, it was 50.
Dang. Okay, so this is still good, but it's not.
No. Allegedly, it was 50 that he asked
but he
for.
wanted. Okay, so it had to be somewhere under 50.
I think that in totality, they probably were offered 30.
Okay.
No, wait, hold up. I think
I'm trying to compare like what their offer was before versus now with them too.
I think that they said Joe wanted 100, and then they were offered 50, and then he didn't take it or something to that effect, which sounds crazy.
That's sick.
Which sounds crazy, but 50 bust down amongst
mad people
because Spotify wanted Savon and the Need to Know podcast with Savon and Alex and I forget the young lady's name, unfortunately, because I've only watched it once.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, and like Joe said, ask for your worth. Like, we all should take note of that. So I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad thing, but
they said they wanted ownership of everything. They wanted money off of the live shows. They wanted money off the merch. They wanted money off of everything.
And now you become like a slave.
And it's $50 million over the course of the contract, which is X amount of years. So at the end of the day,
it might have
$50
been
million, they might have ended up with $2 million, which obviously is a lot of money, but for what
the value that they're bringing, the stars of the show,
and you got to bust that down amongst
should be living good,
managers and stuff like that. But they secured a deal allegedly somewhere around that number. They would assume it to be
the Sirius deal.
Yeah,
it was around allegedly 10 million.
Yeah, from what people can ascertain.
And do you know what their production looks like? I know they have like a girl in the background who I always hear. They of course have a studio that they're at. Yeah. But aren't they working with somebody? Remember like when they did their skit when they first introduced the podcast? Mm-hmm. Are they working with them? Wasn't that like some entertainment or some like production company in New York?
Yeah, probably.
Okay. So they got to pay them. Would they already have a fixed deal with them, right? Like if they have like a contract on the uses of the space, that contract, it wouldn't change because now they work with Sirius, right? Or with Sirius now want them to work in a different space possibly.
So they said that, or Maul said that they still, or maybe it was both of them that said it, I don't know. But they said that they still own 100% of it. So creatively, they can do whatever they want. It's more so a licensing deal.
Okay, so they can still work in that studio that they're in.
Yeah, so Sirius most likely is going to be, this deal is most likely their Spotify one where they can still do whatever they want. They're just exclusively going to be putting out the audio or something on Sirius. So if you only want audio, then you have to go through Sirius.
So that's a good thing then, because that means like I said, they already have a contract with the production company for use of like that space. The contract's not going to change. So now that they're making more money, like they're still going to be paying them probably the same amount that they're paying already.
I don't know what that company does because I'm pretty sure the studio they use that's their friends anyway. So I don't think the two are related, but I'm not even sure what that other company does.
I never understood like that whole skit, like what they did in the beginning. Like, could they said like, remember they're like, oh, they did the whole job interview thing.
Yeah, unless it was just a joke.
Yeah, it might have just been a joke. But I'm pretty sure like whoever they did it with though was like some production company. But it might have been a joke. Who knows?
But long story short, Joe apparently responded to Rory and Mal's podcast deal.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what he said.
Which he said he posted with one of those black screens. You know when people try to tweet on Instagram. He said they'll question your character once you stop taking care of them. Joe Budden wrote over a black screen on his story.
They'll question your character when you stop taking care of them.
Ooh,
what does that have to do with them signing the deal?
Let me hit my Joe gunshots. Lick a shot.
What they got to do with the deal?
Because this was allegedly in a response to this that Mal said. I think this is Mal. Let me make sure because
it might be. Mal, I think Mal's the one that has more anger, which makes sense. That's your best friend from a long time. Usually, two friends who low key probably still have love for each other be really hurt when friendships fall apart. Yeah,
this did come from Mal. It says there were a lot of things we wanted to do in the old show that we weren't able to because we just didn't have as much control after a while. Looking back, that was the beginning of the end. Honestly, all that started when every time we wanted to try something, the energy around it would just be like, I don't know, despite the fact that this is our show. You know what I mean? He said, and then there were also a lot of business meetings that were happening that we didn't know about. Coming out of all of that was a blessing because now it's literally just Rory and myself having conversations about what we creatively wanted to do, stuff that before would not have seen the light of day because the energy around it was just, I don't know, let's just think about that. Let's come back to that. It was never, yes, let's do it. Let's try. With just Rory and myself, it can happen so freely now. So I think Joe's response was to that comment.
So saying like, they'll question like his character, like about how he wanted to do things.
I guess.
After he took care of them, basically put them on the show.
Which is crazy because like.
The show's not the show without them. Like
that's the thing.
Like we could give Joe his respect. Like, okay, yes, you used your name to create this platform, but you have to admit your friends combine him with you because it wasn't just obviously just them. The combination of you three is what made the show what it is. I think he'll never admit that because it's a pride thing, an ego thing. No one, like when you feel like you were the celebrity of the group, you'll never want to admit that other people was a part of that. Like you couldn't do it without them. Like I feel like he just doesn't want to like say that to himself.
And that's what Mal was saying, where he was like, because Mal addressed that when they did their episode where they addressed. Well, it wasn't even an episode. They didn't even have the podcast at that point. I don't think it was just them doing their response video. He was like, "Yeah, Joe, I was out on tour with you when you was doing these shows, and nobody was showing up.
Nobody was there for you. Yeah, like people. If you think about it, Joe before the podcast had a bad like rep. A lot of people associated him with being this angry guy who always just starting stuff with celebrities, you know? He still kind of got that rep. But, like, the podcast really did give him a whole different kind of, like, rebrand that he needed. And it's because your friends were there. People got to see the interaction with friends and how you are behind the scenes, you know? It's like, you know, we watched that thing on the History Channel with the foods that made America and, like, McDonald's. How you had the two brothers that made McDonald's and they didn't want to try anything new. Like, Joe, I guess you could say in this case. And then you had the one guy that comes in and he made McDonald's what it is today. Those two founders could have been like, we made it. You wouldn't have McDonald's without us. But it's like, no, like him coming in and changing things up is what made McDonald's what it is today. Yeah, like you can't have McDonald's without both parts. But you have to give both parts their credits because you can't have like just because one person invented it, the other person brought it to what it is today. His business mindset.
Comparing Joe to McDonald's is crazy.
No, the two brothers. Remember the two brothers? They was like, we cool. We don't want McDonald's to be this big thing. We're cool with what we're doing. And this other guy came in like, no, let's switch it up. Like we gonna take this international. And the brother's like, he didn't have it. Have the brand and do what we do with it. We'll sell it. You know.
This is such an interesting thing. The thing about this is, though, I thought they ended amicably, because even the few references that Rory and Mal have, well, not Mal. Mal hasn't said anything, but Rory mostly the references he's made. He's like, we're all past it, but clearly
no, but you know they're not, because you see like on the podcast they make jokes. They make jokes a lot. I mean, it could have just been jokes.
They don't make jokes a lot. It's just Rory. He just made like 2 comments. Yeah. He said the Joe the Mary hat or something.
Something recently that said on the last episode, like
they said something about like the previous podcast or something.
Yeah.
But they never said his name ever, except that one time.
Yeah, I'm saying you can still see this, like still some small, very subtle shade there sometimes. Rarely. Like you said, it's been like 3 episodes.
I think I know what you mean. Because they were talking about business dealings or something.
Yeah, they said something about like accountants. So spreadsheets. Remember they were like, we need to see the spreadsheets. But the accounting, they made some jokes for like a couple times.
Because I'm sure they still didn't get their money.
Which, rightfully so. This is still very fresh when you think about it. It's been like 6 months, right? Since all this went down. It's still pretty fresh. Like we lived here when it happened, so.
Somebody stealing $400K is crazy.
Yeah, it sucks though, cause like I hope one day they get to a good place, cause you have people that created like something legendary together and now hate each other. That's like not what you want.
But it's allegedly hate each other. We don't know.
Yeah, but it's Joe. Joe needs to. He's like Joe's one of those people who just can't take accountability. Like people are all flawed, but you could say like where you went wrong, and he's not that person. It's something with him. It's very strange. But the ego is that big that he can never just be like, I was wrong.
Yeah.
No, that's sad. And that's somebody getting your worst enemy. Because look what you did. You literally collapsed the empire. Simply because your ego was that big. And it could have been saved. When Mal and Rory came back and there was still some tension, I still feel like then it could have been saved. But once it got to the whole... I feel like Mal was going to... No, but Mal seemed like...
He's even said that.
No, but I'm saying Mal seemed like he was kind of in a good mood. He even said, no, but he said after their talk, everything was good. But then when Joe sat there and said, that's literally what Mal said himself, that when Joe sat there and said, I don't owe my friends respect, that was it. I said it could have been saved before he said, I don't owe my friends respect.
No, but they addressed that even after that part. If you remember, either there was in their response video or the first video they did. No, it was in the response video.
No, I thought they said they had that in-person talking that actually went good. And that Joe behind the scenes was all apologetic and like admitting to his wrongs.
They said that in the last episode of the podcast. But Mal expounded. He said that he knew it was over when they had that conversation in Park's backyard, and was like, he said that he knew it was over, and Rory was just trying to keep the podcast going and keep everybody together. So even in the video or the episodes they did after that, the common knowledge was that Rory knew that Mal was done and Mal knew that he was done regardless. There was really no way to save it.
But I do feel like the whole I don't owe my friends respect was really like, all right, that's it. Now it's not even a chance. Like now it's done. It's done. Like not even just the podcast, but the friendship. Like that was like the end all be all. Was I don't owe my friends respect. It was like, okay, you know, owe me respect. And like, you know, Mal said like for him, respect means everything. That's, you know, where he comes from, that type of.
Yeah. I'm kind of glad it ended, honestly. Sometimes you gotta.
Yeah, sometimes, you know, like,
you gotta let a good thing
they always
go.
Yeah, I was about to say that's like a saying. Like sometimes good things like come to an end. Everything has to come to an end eventually, and like it sucks that it kind of had to end like that. But
because the podcast was amazing during the good times, but during like the weirdness of it, it was like
the
cringy.
vibe was so cringy.
Like sometimes I wouldn't even like if it was a new episode. Sometimes obviously you go straight to the comments. If it was certain comments, I literally wouldn't even watch the episode.
Around the time of the downfall too, like that's when it got cringe.
Yeah,
it's so unfortunate that the podcast fell apart too when we moved here, because like literally we were always like I knew that someday you watched, and I like watched sometimes too. So I was like, okay, cool. Now we get to watch together, and then it ended.
Yeah, but I just thought the comment was interesting. But congrats to them.
Yeah, and like you were saying too, like when times were good, they were good. But like when you really think about it, there was not really much growth. So it's cool to see Rory and Mal do their own thing, like them cooking in what's his name's house. What's his name?
Belly.
Yeah, Belly's house, and like they just have different stuff going on. Like it's like a different vibe, and it's cool. Like it's more than the podcast, so it's cool to see like how it's going. I feel like Joe kind of wanted to stay in that box, and like, you know, it was good for what it was. Like it really was good. But I feel like after a while, you have to develop. You know, the same thing we were saying with like music and artists. Eventually, I figured we got to a point where people would have been kind of bored.
Yeah, because
so you needed that experimenting that Mom wanted to do.
The interesting thing though, and then we could switch to something else, but they had a lot of those moments where Joe was like, "Oh, who's available this weekend? We're gonna go to the basketball court. We're gonna record ourselves playing." And it's like he said things like that, but to see that it never ended up happening is interesting because then it's like, well,
And a lot of people have people like that in their lives. Like they'll be like, "Oh, let's do this," and it never happens. Like you need people with intention. And he's like one of those people who kind of like the ball was in his court, for high key because it's still his name. Like it's still Joe Budden podcast, but yeah, somebody like that who will say that, but then no action. It's like you get tired of that for a while. Like, okay, yeah, we're gonna do this, and you never do that. I hate people like that. Like, oh, we're gonna do this, we're about to do this, but it never happens.
Yeah,
We're gonna go on this trip, we're gonna go on this, it never happens. Yeah.
Yeah.